holiness of heart and life, and we're going to explore a story of radical love that you just heard with Cindy. Radical love and extravagant holiness. It's in Luke chapter 7, verses 36 to 50. But first, a joke. Have you heard the one of the rainbow that got in trouble with the law? They sent him to prison so he could reflect on what he had done. But don't worry, the service was light. Like a prism, today we're gonna hold it up to some light and see this story maybe from a particular different angle that maybe you hadn't seen it before. I know for me this story impacted me this week in ways I didn't expect. I'd always been focused on that last part of who does this man think he is that he can forgive sins, and I'm not sure. I think I've been missing the focus for 52 years. We often think of holiness in terms of avoiding sin, right? So we follow the rules, we do what we're supposed to do, we might even set ourselves apart from those who don't. But Jesus redefines what holiness is. He says it's not separation from sinners or those who might be sinning, but it's as love that reaches out to other people, reaches out to sinners like ourselves. And it's this holiness that is expressed in love. It's holiness that expresses love from a transformed life because of the gratitude we have for God's forgiveness. Because if you remember, right, the scriptures tell us that all have fallen short of the glory of God. And all have sinned. And to help us frame today's message, I want us to consider this question. Do you live a faith with a sense of deep gratitude for what Jesus has done? Or are we, have our faith become routine and kind of blah? Something that we may just do without much passion or thought or even love? That's what we need to consider today. But first, let's set the scene of this scandalous dinner. You'll be seeing in just a moment a scene from the dinner. And our passage is one of the most intimate and powerful moments of Jesus' ministry, I believe. Jesus is invited to the home of Simon the Pharisee. Now, this is not the same Simon that was called as a disciple a couple weeks ago. This is Simon who was a Pharisee. He's a well-respected religious leader. They're still in the area of Galilee, in the northern part of Israel where we have been these last several weeks. But I don't know that this is really this is not like a dinner club or supper club kind of invitation, right? I think the Pharisee, Simon, is kind of giving him a backhanded compliment. He wants to invite him to dinner, but it's more to keep an eye on Jesus, maybe to scrutinize Jesus and to test him a little bit more, to kind of size him up. In the Greco-Roman world, they had these symposium dinners, and these meals were social events with very clear rules. A host would provide water for the guests' feet, which was a basic act of hospitality. And they would greet their guests with a kiss, similar to what maybe you think about our European brothers and sisters might greet someone, a sign of welcome. And then they might even pour some oil on their head as a gesture of honor to the guests. And the fact is that Simon the Pharisee withholds this from Jesus and snubbing him kind of subtly. We don't really know if he withheld it from everyone, but we do know that he withheld it from Jesus for some reason. And then is where the dinner gets even more scandalous, because an uninvited guest comes in. Now, it wasn't like she broke into the house. The doors and windows of ancient Near East homes and businesses were open. Anyone could really walk in. So it's not like she broke into this place. But this uninvited guest, a woman known in the town to be a sinner, enters the scene. Now, there's been some really, I think, bad history that goes along with many women in the Bibles that are identified as sinners, because immediately the interpretation for the last 2,000 years, or probably not even the last, probably most the last several hundred years especially, has been that these women who are sinners, according to the Bible, were prostitutes or had some kind of sexual sin. And there's absolutely no evidence here that this woman has any kind of sexual sin or is a prostitute for sure. We don't really know what her sin is, but it's enough that the town knows about the sin. Some people also have assumed and kind of lined this up to be Mary Magdalene, because there's 3 other stories in the scriptures and the other gospels that are very, very similar to this story, but not the same. And in those, Mary Magdalene has a presence. But this woman is not Mary Magdalene. Luke is specific because Mary Magdalene will make an entrance in the next chapter, in chapter 8. But this woman is not a prostitute, and she is not Mary Magdalene. What we do know about her is that she is overwhelmed with gratitude for what Jesus has done for her. And then she does something deeply shocking and personal. She stands behind Jesus weeping, and she lets her tears fall on his feet. And then she bends down and wipes them with her hair. And you might be wondering, well, in our world, right, we think about you're reclining for dinner, right? When I go home today, I'm going to recline for some lunch. I can just tell you that right now, okay? Probably going to put on some Netflix or a game or something, and we're going to recline, right? Can't do this too long. This is a lot of ab work here, okay? But that's not how we would recline in the first century. Hey, John, can you help me? Okay, all right. Come right over here and center stage, John. Let's give it up for John Rowe. All right. Can you recline like on your side, lay on your right side, on sideways, all the way down?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
No, I don't want to lay on the
Okay. All right. Well, you pretend that you be the woman. I'll be Jesus then. You don't want to be. I can't believe you don't want to be Jesus. Okay. All right. So this is the idea of reclining in the first century ancient Near East. Sort of like a jazzercise position, right? Okay. You know? You didn't think I could do this, right? All right. And the woman, in order to be behind Jesus and her tears to fall on her feet, would be kind of standing down here at the feet. So it's not in a reclining position that we would think about lazy boy, okay? Well, not this lazy boy anyways. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Let's give it up for John. And you can see sort of in this picture, they would often would recline and then lean on one shoulder, and then they would eat with the other. And so this woman is behind Jesus. And she begins to weep, and she begins to weep in such a way that her tears begin to cover his feet. And then she bends down, and she uses her hair, she undoes her hair and uses her hair to dry off his feet. And not only that, then she breaks open this alabaster jar of this great perfume and pours it on his feet and anoints his feet. Another, I think, disservice that this passage has gotten over the years is so often this is this kind of interpreted as an erotic act or a seductive act. And this is not a seductive act at all. This is an act of deep love and gratitude and worship of Jesus. There's nothing sexual about this. We get those ties because there are Hebrew connotations with the feet, and we see that in the story of Boaz and Ruth. But this does not have any sexual overtones. It's an act of love and gratitude and worship. And Simon the Pharisee, he's over on the other side of the room, and he's watching this story unfold. And he thinks to himself, if this man were a prophet, like many are saying, and like I might have thought he was, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. But Simon's response reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of holiness for him. He sees himself as righteous, the righteous Pharisee. And he sees this woman as definitely as being unrighteous, unclean. He assumes that if Jesus were the holy one that he says he is and others think he is, that he would reject her. Certainly, holiness and sinfulness cannot exist together. And if Jesus was holy, then he would know and he would not let her be touching him. But Jesus does something very unexpected, which is just as Jesus would do, right? He flips the script. And then he tells the story, though, before he kind of calls out Simon. He tells this story, this parable. And a parable is a short story with a moral. It usually has some kind of connection that people would understand. So they're talking about being in debt to someone. And he tells the story of a moneylender, and two people owed this moneylender money. One owed him 500 denarii, which was about 2 years of wages. Okay, so just compute that for yourself, right? And the other one owed him 50 denarii, which was about 2 months. That's nothing to slouch at either, right? 2 months, we missed 2 months' wages. Many of us are in a world of hurt, right? I know I am. And neither could repay their debt. So the lender, amazingly, forgave this debt. And Jesus asks Simon the Pharisee, he says, who do you think loved the moneylender more? And we're told that Simon answers correctly. He says, well, probably the one with the larger debt. And Jesus affirms this. You've answered correctly. But then he goes on to give what the key point of the lesson is. He says, the woman understands her need for grace, but Simon the Pharisee does not. In fact, he's thinking, well, I don't really have much need. I don't have much sin. He might even say, I don't have any sin. I do everything I'm supposed to do. And yet this woman, she is overwhelmed with gratitude. But Simon feels no need for it. So what about us? Do we recognize our own need for Christ's forgiveness? Or do we think we're good enough? We're okay. Have we become like Simon, too accustomed to our religious life that we forget how much grace we've received, how much grace and love and forgiveness that God has given us? This woman's worship is not about earning her forgiveness. She clearly has experienced the forgiveness of Christ before this, but this is her response. Because we're told at the beginning of the scriptures that she comes and she hears that Jesus is going to be at Simon's house, and she makes a beeline for that place. Intentionally, because she's bringing this alabaster jar with her too. So she's met Jesus somewhere before. She's had an encounter with Jesus, and she's coming to share her response to this grace and love and forgiveness. And after telling this parable, Jesus turns to the woman, but in turning, he's talking to Simon. And he says, do you see this woman? But Simon didn't really see her. Like us, Simon looked past her, looked at her sinful nature. But Jesus saw her heart and her soul. Simon saw a sinner, but Jesus saw a forgiven worshiper. And Jesus contrasts Simon's lack of hospitality with this woman's great love. He said, Simon, you didn't give me any water for my feet, but she has washed them with her tears. Simon, you didn't give me a kiss of greeting when we came in, but she has not stopped kissing my feet this entire time. And, I could have asked you to kiss my feet, John. Okay, all right. Noted. Thank you. No water, no kiss of greeting, no oil for my head, Simon, but she has poured perfume on my feet. And then Jesus declares that her many sins have been forgiven and that her great love has shown itself. You see, Simon thought that holiness meant avoiding sinners. And Jesus shows us that holiness is expressed through love and gratitude. Holiness is not just moral purity, but it's compassion in action. If we are truly experiencing holiness, there should be a response of great love and compassion in our actions within our life. It's not something that we can merely talk about. It's something that we should be doing, and doing from a second nature if we are truly experiencing holiness. So how might we express gratitude? Are we like Simon, comfortable in our faith, but maybe lacking love? We've grown into a rut. This is what we do. I come to Sunday morning worship. Maybe I come to even Bible study or Sunday school. And maybe I serve too, but I'm not doing it as a response to God's love for me. I'm doing it out of, this is what we do. Or maybe we're even doing it out of pride. I have to do it because they need me and no one else could do it if I'm not there. I got news for you. There's none of us, me included, that this church won't go on tomorrow if we're not here. Most of all, probably me. Except for maybe the band. So you guys don't go anywhere, okay? Well, and the tech people, we need tech people too. Just kidding. None of us are that important. So are we like Simon and comfortable but lacking love? Or are we like this woman that's humbled and grateful for what Christ has done for her? And then the bigger question is, do our actions reflect a heart that's overflowing with gratitude and love? Because holiness is love in action. It is the natural outflow of a heart that's been transformed by Christ's forgiveness. At the end of the passage, sort of like a benediction that we're going to have in a few minutes, that Jesus says to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. So she leaves not just forgiven, but she leaves completely transformed. What might this mean for us today? One, we need to recognize our own need for grace. All of us here, as I said, Romans says that all of us are sinners and all of us have fallen short of the glory of God. So we must recognize our own need for grace. Simon thought he was righteous, but it was his pride that was blinding him to his need for Jesus. The woman, however, she knew and she responded in great love. So which one are we? Which one are you? Secondly, holiness is not about status or power or knowledge. It's about a response. Simon had religion. but didn't have love. He was like the clanging cymbal that Paul talks about. The woman, on the other hand, she may not have had as much religion as Simon the Pharisee, but she was filled with gratitude and was overflowing in acts of love. And thirdly, our response to Jesus should be one of gratitude and love and transformation. Because holiness is not just us avoiding sin. It's not us seeing sin and going, okay, let me go this way. Right? That's part of it. That's part of living a pure life and practicing individual piety. But it's more about actively loving like Christ. And if we truly recognize what Jesus has done, our lives should reflect that gratitude every moment. We shouldn't have to say one word. It should be known by our actions. This is not just this woman's story. This is our story. We're all sinners in need of God's grace. And when we receive his forgiveness, gratitude should just permeate from every pore of our body in love and holiness. So are we like Simon, practicing religion but missing the heart of God? Are we like the woman, overwhelmed by gratitude and expressing it so freely? We can probably picture in our minds maybe times in our lives when we've been more like Simon, or other times when we've been like the woman, or maybe we can picture others around us. Our faith life is an ebb and flow, right? We're not perfect. We're not robots. But our goal is to live in a space where we are overwhelmed by gratitude and expressing it in loving actions. So what acts of love and holiness can we offer Jesus this week? Who are you going to be around that may need to experience this overflow of holiness from your life? Not because of who you are, but because of who Jesus is. Listening, yes. But remember this as we go out this week. Holiness is not about separation. It's not about moral purity. It's not about how much knowledge we have or how many verses you can memorize. It's not about status or power. Holiness is love expressed in action. Amen.